Inside the inner sanctum of the Hoover Building, the air has grown thin. For the first time in the history of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, its director is looking at a future that doesn't involve a motorcade or a security detail, but a 6-by-9-foot cell. The date is etched into the legal record, December 20, but the tension began long before the deadline. It started with 3 words uttered by federal Judge Richard Burman that sent a tectonic shiver through the Department of Justice: immediate arrest ordered. This is not a headline from a tabloid. This is the calculated, cold reality of a constitutional collision. A sitting FBI Director, Kash Patel, has been given an ultimatum that leaves no room for maneuver. Either he releases the unredacted Epstein files, or he becomes the first head of a major federal agency to be taken into custody for contempt of court. Pay close attention to the silence that followed that order, because in that silence, the very definition of executive power is being dismantled. The clock is not just ticking, it is screaming. And the man who once held the nation's secrets is now facing the one thing he cannot redact: the law. To understand why a federal judge is willing to jail the nation's top law enforcement officer, we have to go back to the documents that have remained in the shadows for over a decade. The Epstein files are more than just names. They are the blueprint of a global network of influence, and allegedly, a list of powerful figures who thought they were untouchable. When Kash Patel took the helm of the FBI, the expectation from the White House was clear: protect the interests of the administration. For months, Patel's legal team argued that these files were protected under executive privilege and national security interests. They claimed that releasing them would jeopardize ongoing investigations and expose sensitive intelligence methods. But Judge Richard Burman, a jurist known for his surgical precision and lack of patience for bureaucratic stalling, saw through the smoke. 3 separate federal courts had already dismissed these privilege claims. They ruled that the FBI was no longer protecting national security, but rather providing political cover for figures linked to the late Jeffrey Epstein, including, as the special counsel suggests, individuals within the current administration's inner circle. The conflict isn't just about documents. It's about the rule of law versus executive overreach. Patel believed the FBI was a fortress that could ignore judicial subpoenas. He was wrong. Burman's courtroom became the place where that fortress began to crumble. The breaking point arrived on December 17th. The courtroom was packed with high-ranking DOJ officials, their faces grim, their folders overflowing. Patel was not present, a move seen by many as a final act of defiance. Judge Burman didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. He looked at Patel's lead counsel and asked a single question: where are the files? When the attorney began to recite the same tired script of procedural delays and security reviews, Burman cut him off. He leaned forward and noted that the FBI had been under a mandatory injunction for 120 days. The patience of the court had expired. This is where everything changes. Burman issued the contempt order. But he didn't stop at a fine. Fines are paid by taxpayers. Burman went for the only thing an official like Patel fears: his liberty. He placed federal marshals on standby. He made it clear that if the encrypted servers containing the Epstein communications were not decrypted and handed over by December 20th, the marshals would enter the Hoover Building and take the director into custody. The legal strategy of delay and pray had officially hit a wall of marble. The DOJ was in a state of total meltdown.
Let's look at the mechanics of this threat. Why can a judge just jail a director? In the American legal system, civil contempt is a unique and terrifying tool. It is not a punishment for a past crime. It is a coercive measure. As the saying goes, the prisoner carries the keys to his own cell in his pocket. If Patel is jailed, he stays there until he complies. No trial, no jury, just the cold reality of confinement until the files are produced. But there is a darker layer here: criminal contempt. Judge Burman hinted that if the files were found to have been intentionally destroyed or further hidden during this delay, the charges would shift from civil to criminal. That means prison time, even after the files are found. Inside the FBI, the atmosphere turned toxic. Career officials, fearful of being swept up in obstruction of justice charges, began leaking the truth about Patel's orders. It was revealed that a shadow task force had been created within the Bureau, specifically to scrub the Epstein files of certain names before the court could see them. This was the breaking point. The judiciary was no longer just asking for compliance. It was fighting a targeted effort to sabotage the truth. Burman's readiness to jail Patel was a message to every rank-and-file agent. Whose side are you on? The Constitution or the director?
If an FBI director is handcuffed, the reverberations will be felt for decades. It would mark the definitive end of the imperial bureaucrat. The political stakes are radioactive. Trump's allies have characterized Burman's order as a judicial coup, an attempt to decapitate the law enforcement wing of the administration. But constitutional scholars see it differently. They see it as the only remaining check on a presidency that has begun to treat federal agencies as personal law firms. The consequences for the Epstein investigation are even more profound. If these files are released unredacted, it won't just be Kash Patel in trouble, it will be a who's who of the global elite. The reason Patel is willing to risk jail is simple: whatever is in those files is likely worse than a contempt charge. We are witnessing a high-stakes game of legal chicken. Patel is betting that Trump will issue a pardon or that the political pressure will force Burman to back down. But Burman has already dismantled that assumption. Pardons do not apply to civil contempt. You cannot be pardoned for a continuous refusal to obey a court order while you are still refusing. The judiciary, by design, is insulated from the noise of the campaign trail, and Richard Burman is a judge who doesn't listen to the news. He writes the record. As the December 20th deadline approached, the logistical preparations for an arrest were finalized. The U.S. Marshals Service, an agency that prides itself on its independence, was briefed on the entry protocol for the Hoover Building. Imagine the image: the director of the FBI, surrounded by his elite security detail, being met at his office door by marshals with a warrant signed by a federal judge. It is a scene that belongs in a political thriller, yet here we are, in 2026, watching it unfold in real time. Kash Patel has a choice. He can be the man who protected the secrets of Jeffrey Epstein and went to jail for it, or he can be the man who finally let the light into the darkest corners of the federal archives. The clock is in its final hour. The marshals are waiting. The judge has signed the order. The era of untouchable officials is over. The law is coming for its secrets. Are you ready to see what's inside?